This Jocks 94.5 podcast is brought to you by Millennium Satellite and Video. Log on to msbnow.com. TV excellence everywhere. That's Millennium. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning starts now.
Welcome back, McElroy Cubelic in the morning, Jocks 94.5. Thanks to Conrad and Damian holding it down there in the first hour of our show, and then carrying over from Morning Jocks, Saber in the studio as well. I currently live from Mockingbird Street in Dallas, Texas, right outside of Starbucks. Everyone's like, "Oh, I can't believe you're doing the show from the car again." First of all, Wi-Fi at Starbucks is phenomenal. My phone in Dallas, being at AT&T, is tremendous, and I have access to coffee and a restroom. What else do you need to properly do a morning radio show? Conrad, Damian, you guys do first hour every day. What more do you need other than coffee and a restroom and decent internet?
I would say those are the bare essentials. Wait, so you're doing the show from outside the Starbucks? Or are you inside?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Starbucks is rocking some indie folk music. I just didn't feel like it was conducive for the environment. I did go check it out, I will admit. And the fact that they were playing like Sade combined with
okay now, all right,
like somebody else that I wasn't even familiar with, and there was like a couple of a couple tambourines and stuff. I was like, I think I'm going to do it from the car.
I'm sure
I even have
Mumford &
air
Sons
conditioning.
is coming up next, Greg. Yeah.
Oh, Mumford Unplugged for sure is on the playlist. There is no doubt they're on the playlist.
Didn't want to do with all the snapping in the background. Yeah.
The best part about what's gone down so far is that I was actually able to listen into the last half of the last segment.
There we go.
As I have already gotten the rental car, I have already called home. We are in a really good spot. But what I found very interesting, the biggest takeaway that I had from the last segment was that Conrad emphatically declared the 2024 version of Alabama as a top 5 roster in college football.
Oh, boy.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. Top 5 roster in college football.
Yeah.
We're standing by that. We feel good about that.
I mean, maybe there's a little wiggle room there, but do you think that was an exaggeration on my part?
I do not think it was a top 5 roster in college football last year.
Okay.
I think this year's version has a chance to be, for sure. But if we go based just on draft picks in the 2025 draft, Georgia had 13 players drafted, Texas 12, Ole Miss 8, Alabama in 4th with 7, which is perfectly fine, not bad. But what I'm getting at is at key positions, edge rusher, left tackle, quarterback, at key positions, do you really think that Alabama had a top 5 roster last year?
I think that going into the season on paper you did. Now, based on the production you got from those positions, I think that's where perfectly fine to debate it. But I was talking strictly on paper going into the season. You look at the Jimmies and Joes that Alabama had, I think that would have been a top 5 roster on paper. But I do agree with you. The production you got, particularly from some of those key positions, I think a lot of people would look at quarterback. That was not top 5 quality that you got from those guys. I was strictly talking on paper going into the year when Kalen DeBoer got started.
Fair enough, when he got started. But was that including when Caleb Downs was still on the roster?
No.
Was that including when others were still on the roster? Because I would admit that last year's version of Alabama was the least talented roster that we've seen since maybe 2007. Now, that's not discrediting the roster. I'm talking about depth. You can give me the recruiting rankings. You give me the 247 composite index. You can give me all that nonsense. The reality is when you look at the roster and what the roster inevitably became because of injury, take Keon Sabb off the roster. Take Jaden Roberts, who was playing most of the year at 70% at best. Take Quay Russaw, who was playing most of the year at 70% at best. Take Damani Jackson, who was playing most of the year with a hip flexor injury in the South Carolina game. Dude gutted it through the rest of the year, but was at well below 100%. And knowing that take Deontay Lawson out, who tore his ACL there at the midway late in the season, whatever game it was. I think it was Oklahoma, might have been the game before. I can't recall exactly when, but it happened. You take what they had at the end of the year, and I would argue that it was a very underwhelming roster given the turnover from the year before. Damian, do you have a thought on this?
Yeah, I lean more with Conrad as far as when Kalen got the job to start it off, you looked at the pieces, it felt like it was one of the better rosters that he was walking into. And to your point, yeah, now I do see what you're coming from of, when you look at the draft picks and also when the performance, when the play happened on the field, yes, it left a lot to be desired. And I look at, I don't know, like I guess the numbers kind of can fool you a little bit because you look at that defense last year and when you look at the entire body of work, it still was one of the better defenses that you had. I think offensively in key moments and key situations, it felt like, okay, yeah, this roster may not, this offensive side of ball may not be where we needed them to be to have the success that we're looking towards as the University of Alabama.
All right, let's continue on, right? The emphatic comment that Conrad made was top 5 roster in college football. So that's all I'm focusing on. You can talk about when Kalen took the job, when he didn't take the job, when Saban retired, whatever. I'm talking about just in the SEC alone, they had the 4th most draft picks.
Yeah.
Okay, Georgia had nearly twice as many. Mm-hmm. Texas had 12, 5 more than Bama. Ole Miss had 8. Who had a better roster, Ole Miss or Alabama last year?
I would say Ole Miss did.
Miss.
100% they did. I'm not sure it's close. Better roster, Texas or Bama?
Texas.
Georgia or Bama?
It was Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia.
Still beat
Ohio State. Now we're out of the SEC. So we're just in the SEC. We're just in the SEC. They're at best 4th. You want to go even to another level? You want to go LSU or Bama?
Oh, that one. I feel like we're splitting hairs on that one. In my opinion.
Exactly. And what was the score?
Of the game, it was 42-13.
Yes. Correct. So based on coaching acumen alone, if the rosters were comparable, what exactly were we looking at there from what we got out of Kalen DeBoer that day?
What are you talking about? In the sense of, well, I mean,
if the
I would
rosters
say that was,
are comparable,
yeah.
If the rosters are comparable, and you think that it was a beatdown, that purely goes to coaching, right? Now you can also point to, well, did Oklahoma have the same roster as Bama? On offense, absolutely not. On defense, they can go, right? Does Vanderbilt have the same roster as Bama?
Lord,
no,
Bama?
No.
Absolutely not. But you can point to 2 critical errors made in the game that resulted in big touchdowns.
Yep.
And big moments in the game. They won the critical moments in that game. Let's continue on, though, with our overall overarching discussion. Ohio State, 14 players drafted. Better roster than Bama?
Yeah, better roster.
All right, now we're at 5.
Yep.
Oregon, 10 players drafted. Better roster than Bama?
Yeah, I'd go better. Yep.
Okay. Penn State last year, only 5 players drafted, but everybody's back. Better roster than Bama?
I think, again, we're splitting hairs there. But if you're going to point that out about Penn State, I think you also have to give credit to Alabama because your LT Overtons, your Tim Keenans, your guys that could have gone to the draft, Amani Jackson, they also came back for Alabama. So they would have had more players drafted, but those guys decided to come back, which plays into what you were saying where you think this year's team could potentially have a top 5 roster. Yeah.
I do really like this year's team. I think they have a top 5 roster.
I think they're
this year.
significantly better than last year, yes.
I agree. I would 100% agree. Another year in development. Hopefully guys stay healthy. You know, that's also pivotal.
Yep.
But massive. All right, let's go to this next one. This one will be interesting. Miami. Same amount of players drafted as Bama. Better roster than Alabama.
No.
Cam Ward.
Better quarterback.
Enough said.
Absolutely,
yes.
Better quarterback.
Yes.
Okay, but see, this was kind of going back to my point, though. Before the season last year, did you not view Jalen Milroe as a top 5 quarterback in college football?
No.
Okay, you did. Okay.
I think he's a top 5 talent in college football. No doubt. Guy is ridiculously talented.
Yeah.
But if I had to list 5 quarterbacks from last year that I would have taken before Jalen, before the season, I could have easily probably put that list together.
Okay, see, I think that's where you and I differ. And maybe that was just me having too much faith in a guy that had really come along in the second half of the previous season and looked really, really sharp for the first 4 or 5 games of last season and then fell off a cliff.
By too much faith, you mean Crimson Conrad game.
Right, like you had too much. You had too much Bammer in you.
He was the returning player last year that had the most Heisman votes in the entire country.
Fair.
Like, I mean,
but what does the Heisman mean?
It means you're one of the best players in college football.
Absolutely.
It means you're one of the most popular players in college football. It doesn't mean you're one of the best.
Come
All right?
on,
You know there's a
Greg.
big difference.
Exactly, yeah.
You and I both know that come on, Conrad, you've been doing this long enough. Do you really think the Heisman every year goes to the best player,
Absolutely
or does it go to
not.
the most popular player?
You're absolutely correct.
Okay.
So we're all in
Thank you.
agreement.
So-
We're all in agreement that Marcus Mariota was the last best player in college football to win the Heisman.
No, I think Lamar
won a Heisman.
Jackson.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson was hands down, and everyone was
Fair.
all mad that Lamar won it. It was like, this guy's ridiculous. Watch this guy.
Yeah, leaps and
He's the
bounds.
best player by a mile. It's not even close.
So Marcus is in the top 3 of the best players in college football to win the Heisman.
Top
though.
3 Oregon Heisman winners. Yes. Yes.
Yes,
The top three
we're
Oregon.
all on the same
Yes.
page. Top 3 amongst guys that finished in the top 3 in the Heisman voting. Yes, I can give you that.
Top 3 Hawaiians.
Alongside
Yes.
LaMichael James and Joey Harrington.
Yeah.
You're right. Well done.
Joey Harrington.
All right, let's go through the quarterbacks from last year.
Yeah.
Like if you think Jalen was a top 5 guy going into last season, I will offer you this. Now, you cannot use last year's performance as an indicator, okay? Let's go through it. Last year in the preseason, were you taking Carson Beck or Jalen Milroe?
Jalen Milroe.
Okay, not true, but that's fine.
Absolutely. He beat
In
Carson
the
Beck.
preseason,
He beat
was the
Carson
de
Beck in the
facto-
SEC championship the year before.
He
yes,
was
yes.
the number one player. He was the number one player like going into the season from a Heisman odds standpoint and from a NFL draft pick standpoint.
And I still would have taken he beat him head to head
Talk to him.
the last year. And I know.
Okay, cool. You
it's-
taking me or you taking over the course of a career? You taking me or Tebow?
well, Tim.
Oh, I
Tebow.
beat him head to head.
And you did.
Well, Tim Tebow. That is a no
Okay,
offense to you,
well,
Greg. There's a much bigger gap between
I'm
you and
not.
Tim
I'm just
Tebow
giving-
than Jalen Milroe and Carson Beck last year.
But I'm just describing the head to head. Is the head to head the ultimate indicator of who you'd rather have?
No, it's not. But that is a part of it. But no, I mean, legitimately, I would have taken Jalen Milroe over Carson Beck last year. I don't think I'm the only person that would have done that.
Take Greg or Steven Garcia.
Greg. I'll take
Yeah,
Greg.
exactly.
I'll take Greg.
Steven Garcia.
Greg or
would you
Cam Newton.
would you have taken Quinn Ewers over Jalen Milroe going into last season?
No, didn't
He
stay
won head
healthy.
to head.
He did.
He won head to head.
He did. Did not stay healthy though.
Okay. Would you have taken Jackson Dart?
Ooh, yeah, probably. Yeah,
It would have been close.
yeah, that would have been that's a tough one. Yeah.
Would you have taken Dylan Gabriel?
Ooh,
Yes.
probably. Yeah. Yep.
Probably. Right?
Yep.
Would you have taken Cam Ward?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Continuing on here. Would you have taken Shador Sanders?
No.
In the preseason.
No, but that's more of a again, this is my personal opinion. I think that would have been more of a distraction in my standpoint. I think he's an excellent player.
Well, you think?
Yeah, yeah, it would have been a distraction. So no, I would not for that reason.
Okay, safe assumption there. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
It would have been a distraction. Would you have taken Cam Rising? Often forgot about, but in the preseason of last year, a lot of optimism.
No, not over Milroe. No.
God, Crimson Conrad's on fire today. I
You
love
would have
where we're
taken
at.
Cam Rising over Jalen Milroe last year?
I wouldn't have.
I think there
Before
would
the
have been
season?
before this. I think there would have been a lot of people that would have taken Cam Rising over Jalen Milroe going into last year.
I would
yes.
entertain the conversation, but no, I would still
Okay,
take
well,
Milroe.
you acted like I had 3 heads when I made the first statement. Now you're like, I'll entertain it. What are we doing?
I'm trying to be nice, Greg.
Goodness, you are being nice, and I'm not being. This is not like a bash Jalen here. I'm just saying like.
No, we
the
can do that. That's
notion, no, that's not necessary.
I know,
What's
I
done
know.
is done.
We're moving on.
But-
I know.
But my whole thing is, last year had they made the college football playoff, that would have been a remarkable accomplishment. And I think that a lot of people want to continue to gloss over the challenges that you inherit when you become the head coach in the middle of January. And I'm not suggesting that Bama's expectations should ever waver. The expectation should always be to try to make the playoff, for sure. But if you look at the situations that all 4 teams endured as a result of Saban retiring, and let's include Michigan in this because Harbaugh left for the NFL. Harbaugh leaves for the NFL, Michigan's open season with all their players.
Mhm.
DeBoer leaves for Bama, Washington open season. Jed Fish leaves for Washington. Arizona open season, right? Arizona goes into the season as the preseason favorite last year. They finished 4-8. 4-8. One of the preseason favorites in the Big 12 had everybody back. They go 4-8. Washington, a year removed from the national championship game, they go 6-6, far below season levels expectation. Michigan starts the season 6-5 before beating Bama and Ohio State in the final 2 games of the season. So yes, finish on a high note, but still one of the more disappointing seasons ever by a defending champion. Bama goes 9-4 with a win at LSU and a win against Georgia. Arguably the best win in the regular season last year. And yet we continue to quantify last year as a pathetic disgrace of a season. And it wasn't. Like, there was a lot of positives from last year when you take into account the circumstances that Kalen DeBoer entailed. Now, I'm not sitting here as an apologist. I'm not. So hear me when I say this. I'm not saying – I think you throw away 2024 just like you throw away 2007 when evaluating whether or not a guy can coach ball. Because no one's judging Nick Saban's performance based off what happened year one. They're judging his performance by what he did in the 16 straight seasons following year one. No one should judge Kalen DeBoer's long-term prospects based on year one.
I agree with that.
They should be focusing on where he goes from here, because that is where he should ultimately be judged, not based on what he had to do during what was a remarkably difficult bridge season from the greatest coach in the history of college football, Conrad. That's all I'm saying. Are we on the same page there?
Absolutely. And let me ask you this question. So do you feel that, okay, so, well, 2 things. Okay, so first off, going into last season, this time a year ago, was your expectation that Alabama would be in the playoff?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
So, and with that, so with what you've seen from Alabama in the past year and a half since Nick Saban retired and Kalen DeBoer took over, do you feel that last year, because I think it's fair to say last year, it probably didn't really feel like Kalen DeBoer's team, right? You were still dealing with the leftovers of Nick Saban. There's still a lot of that influence going around. Do you feel like now going into this year that this Alabama football program is the Kalen DeBoer program?
Yes. Far more so. And partly because every single guy that didn't want to be a part of what the program would look like under Kalen DeBoer has had so much freedom in the last 12 to 18 months to leave.
Yeah.
Like, if you didn't like where the program was going, you don't have to be there. Like, you have options. Last year, guys did not have options as much because the portal, while they could have gone elsewhere, they bought in, but did they buy all the way in? That's my question. Because I know last year that there was a constant tug of war amongst the holdovers from the previous regime. That's within the locker room, by the way. And all of a sudden, they've done it a certain way for 4 years. Well, this is the way we've always done it. And then Kalen DeBoer comes in, and it's different. And they're like, hang on a second, we don't do it that way. Like, we don't do it that way. And in an effort to just have a roster, Kalen...
Okay, so I think I'm assuming, I don't want to put words in Greg's mouth. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming what he's saying is essentially you had the tug of war in the locker room of guys that wanted to do things the Saban way because, hey, this process worked for so long. Why would we go away from that? While also Kalen DeBoer trying to find that middle ground of, I want this to be my program, but I also need players to go and field a roster for the upcoming season. And I totally understand that whole dichotomy of it. And I agree with a lot of the things that Greg just said. I do not agree with the fact that on paper going into last season, Alabama had one of the best rosters in college football. Now, did it look that way at the end? Absolutely not. And for a lot of the reasons that Greg laid out for that. But I guess that's just kind of where my perspective is on Alabama. And I think, you even heard Greg say it, right? The expectation last year, even with all the changes, was the playoff. You didn't make the playoff. So it's a little bit of a disappointment. Was it a disaster? No, but it was disappointing.
Boy, you have been in a debating mood all week, dog. Like, I didn't know that Bama hater, beat down was going to turn you into such a Skip Bayless type demon. Dog. You good?
I just thought we were going to talk about Mumford and Sons and coffee. And Greg's grilling me on quarterback stuff. I thought that was a good conversation. No,
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. We'll keep the conversation going on the other side. Get to your text message, your calls. Keep it locked right here on Mac and Q.
Go inside Jocks 94.5 on Jocks TV. Morning Jocks, Mac and Cube, and Three-Man Front video simulcasts are presented by Bill Smith Buick GMC and Game Day Men's Health. Watch on the Jocks mobile app and YouTube by searching Jocks 94.5 TV.
Welcome back, McElroy Cubelic in the morning. 8:22 a.m. here. I'm Dallas, Texas. Starbucks parking lot. Conrad, Damian, Saber holding it back in the studio. Appreciate you guys being with us today. Fun conversation so far throughout the first hour of the show or whatnot. We'll continue on as we want to discuss what's reasonable for this upcoming season. I think we all agree it's reasonable to expect Alabama to contend for a playoff spot this year or to make the playoff, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that to me is a successful year every year nowadays. I know most people. Now, for example, I think it depends a little bit on the team. Like, for example, Clemson and Penn State, like I would expect them with what they bring back to make it beyond the first round of the playoff, to make it to the semifinal. I think that should be the bare minimum expectation with all the pieces back. Can you guys get on board with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would say so.
Now, in a year in which everybody's back and you have multiple year starting quarterback and you have great coaching continuity from one year to the next, maybe in some cases you've upgraded talent by way of the portal, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect you to make a slightly deeper run than just making the playoff. And those are the two teams right now that I would have in that category. But for just about everybody else, I think making the playoffs a remarkably good year. And I think there's about 35, 36 teams that could realistically make the playoff this year. I know that's insane to think about, but how many of y'all had SMU in the playoff last year? How many of y'all had Indiana in the playoff last year?
Yeah.
Probably none, right?
Nope.
No, I
Not
think
even
you're
in the conversation.
I think you're spot on with that.
But you definitely had Arizona State in the playoff, right?
Well, yeah,
Duh.
I mean, duh, yeah.
It's the Big 12.
Well,
Anything
Greg
can happen.
didn't because he was obsessed with Cam Rising, but other than that, yeah.
Yeah, first of all, I did have Utah in the playoff last year,
Hey,
and I
it's
might
okay.
have
I
it
did
again
too.
this year.
I
We'll
did
see.
too.
As I look up, and there's a billboard advertisement for Texas Tech telling you to find your limits. I don't know what that means.
Well, we don't know what their spending
basically,
limit is. They don't have one.
Contribute to their collective is what I'm interpreting that as right now as I sit in the Starbucks parking lot. Looking at some of the other teams that you think have a chance to make a legitimate run this year, like how many teams in the SEC should be disappointed, in your opinion, for not making the playoffs?
I think Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and LSU. Realistically.
You think LSU should be disappointed if they don't make the playoffs?
Yes, but I also think part of that is just the nature of you've had multiple years of Brian Kelly now not making a playoff, and you've gotten close, and you've had really high-level quarterback play all of those years, and you haven't been able to get over that hurdle. So, yeah, I would say and I think that's for the LSU fan base, they are playoff or bust, or that's how they view it, in my opinion.
I'm kind of on the same page. Damian, are you too?
Yeah, I think those four teams should feel disappointed if they do not see themselves in the college football playoffs.
I'm kind of like with the same way with Clemson and with Penn State. This feels like LSU's really gone all in this year.
Mm-hmm.
Does it not?
Best
I mean,
portal
it
class.
feels like they have, with the pieces they had in the portal, with retaining the quarterback and getting him to come back when there was talks of him potentially going to the NFL and him kind of spurning that opportunity to come back and chase a championship. I think this is kind of a playoff or bust year. And I don't want to put unnecessary pressure because they haven't done it yet, but I almost put LSU in that same category where they've gone all in so much to the extent that I almost expect them to make a deeper run than just making the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
I know that seems crazy when they haven't even sniffed it yet, but with everything they have and all the pieces they acquired this offseason, isn't it fair to suggest this team should make it beyond the top 12 to the top 8 or to the top 4? Is that fair?
Yes, I'm with you, Greg. It's okay, yeah, you're going to – the way that this team looks right now, and if they get better defensively, it's hard not to look at this LSU team as like, okay, not only are they going to get in, but they could mess around here and be hoisting the trophy at the end of the year.
And I would go a step further. I think all four of those teams we just mentioned making the playoff would be, again, that's a good thing. I think a lot of people would be happy with that. But I think all 4 of those teams have expectations that if they get into the playoff, they're not going to be one and done. And I'm not saying national championship or bust, but I think the expectation for a lot of those teams is to win at least 1 or 2 games in the playoff.
I think that's perfectly fair. And it depends on the year, right? I mean, it depends on the year, and I don't think it's every year. With where we're at in college football, man, making the playoffs every year feels like and with the schedules what they are, and with the personnel turnover that it is, like making the playoffs every year is not going to be a foregone conclusion. Now, expansive 16 might be a slightly different conversation. But I don't know about y'all. Like, I think making the playoffs is harder than people realize. Now, it was different when you played the division model in the SEC and you played the same 6 teams every year. You knew them inside and out. Depending on the year, you catch a couple teams out of the East. But the East was, for the most part, gettable. I just think I think making the playoffs and expecting to make the playoffs every year, just because it's a 12, isn't real. Because there's going to be teams that are going to go 10-2 because their schedule is so dang manageable. Or 11-1 like Indiana last year, whose schedule is just so dang manageable. Now, I think they were legit, but I also at the same time acknowledge that making the playoffs should be hard and is hard. And if you have some injuries, you have some bad luck, you have some no-show performances, and you get left out, doesn't necessarily qualify your season as a failure, but it also, I think we should tip our cap to every team that is capable of making the playoffs. And if you don't make it one year, you don't need to burn the program to the ground. You just need to acknowledge that making the playoffs is hard. But maybe I'm totally psycho here. Let's go to Lee in Cincinnati on expectations. Lee, how are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic, Greg. I hope you're having a great day. But one thing I want to say, I think the SEC is a victim of their own success now, the expanded model. Here's what I mean. Because let's face it, you've had, within the last 20 years, Florida, LSU, Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, all win the national championship, okay? 5 teams. Now, you've only got, at most in the Big Ten, 3 teams you ever look at: Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, maybe. All right? And outside of that, the ACC really, let's face it, there's only one team that's a perennial powerhouse, Clemson. My point is that because the SEC has been successful, had so many different teams that have been good, the parity in it, and now the expanded playoffs, they're a victim of their own success. Every team is expecting now in the SEC to make the playoffs, and that puts more pressure on the head coaches, in my opinion. On every head coach. Every head coach has to win every year. They have to make the playoffs every year, or they could be gone, because that is now the expectation of each SEC team because of what the team's success, because of what they've done to themselves. I know it sounds bad to be a victim of success, but that's pretty much what each team in the SEC is.
Well, I think you're 100% on point in saying that, but should it be that way?
No, it shouldn't. I'm not saying it should at all. Not at all. But the unfortunate part is fans are fickle. You know that as well as I do. And every fan thinks, we did it once, why can't we do it again? What is the difference now? And that's the problem. They don't realize that the face of college football changes, the teams change, that talent changes, and it's not any fault of the coach. It's the fact that that's just how it is. Sometimes you run into a gold mine of talent, a gold mine of players, guys you didn't realize were as good as they were when you first got them, and they turn out to be diamonds in the rough. That happens all the time. But now fan bases are expecting that every year from every team in the SEC because they've done it before. Why can't you do it again? What about now?
Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly fair, and I think that's a great call, Lee. Thank you so much. I think South Carolina is a great example of that this year. Like, South Carolina last year has a remarkable year, and you guys watched them. Like, down the stretch, how confident were you in South Carolina in every single game they played in the month of November that they were going to win the game or be super competitive in the game? Like, I wasn't. Like, I still wasn't even a believer going into the bowl game because I saw them get drummed by
Texas
by
A&M.
Ole Miss. I saw them. No, they beat A&M.
Or no, yeah, it was Ole Miss. You're right.
It was Ole Miss. I saw them get drummed by Ole Miss. I saw them play well against Bama. I saw them play well against LSU. But I was never like super convinced. And yet now, not only do they expect to be better this year, despite all their losses on personnel on the defensive side, the expectation for Shane Beamer has now changed from like, hey, get us to the postseason to, hey, get us in playoff contention. All based on 1 year in which they won a couple games late, close. And they had a couple close call losses in the games as well. Like, South Carolina is the best example of what Lee's describing, Conrad. And I think it does paralyze the expectations. It paralyzes kind of the fan base because they sit there and think, well, why not us? If Indiana can do it, why can't we? And that makes it very, very difficult because you're seeing teams that you wouldn't expect to contend for the playoff. They're making it. So the teams that expect to be in the playoff, well, how the heck can Indiana do it and not us? Which only amplifies the pressure even higher, Conrad.
Would you put Missouri in that same boat as South Carolina, coming off of back-to-back 10-win seasons?
I think it's fair. I just think the Missouri circumstances are a little bit different, partly because their schedule within the SEC has been so manageable. Like last year, Bama beat them by 35 points. Like, I mean, they blanked them. You know what I mean? It just, like, Missouri feels a little bit like Indiana, where I still think they're a good, solid program, but they're a little dependent on who they draw in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if they play the gauntlet that is Texas, Bama, LSU, Georgia, and Florida, then, I mean, how many of those games will they be favored in?
No, I think that's fair, where I think Missouri's absolutely a team that could win 9 games this year, and people go, man, look at what a great year it was. And that is a good year. But then you look at who they beat, and it's, well, they didn't really beat anybody that impresses you or had a number next to their name when they played.
Yeah, they would get the Missouri would get the SMU treatment.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, like, great record, but who'd you beat?
Correct.
They get the Indiana treatment. Oh, great record, but who'd you beat? Which I think is totally fair. Now, I think Indiana was very real with how they played against the teams they beat. I mean, they just smoked people. So I think they were very real. Whereas I don't know how real SMU was. I think they were really good. I think they're really solid and deserving of a playoff spot based on their record. But were they really, really top quality? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Damian, are you on the same page?
Yeah, man, and I think a lot of people going into the ACC championship game was kind of feeling that same way of, okay, well, if they're in this championship game because of what they've done, you kind of look and say, well, who they beat. But then their performance in the ACC championship game was like, okay, maybe this SMU team was kind of like just all the stars aligned. And, yeah, they ended up losing it. But the effort that they put out, it was, okay, they kind of, I guess they deserve to be here.
And they were great in the second half, right?
True.
Like, I mean, if you remember that ACC championship game,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, this is the team that we've been hearing about. You know what I mean? The first half, it's like, good Lord. You know? It's like, so I think when you see glimpses of that, it gives you a little bit of a false premise. But at the same time, man, I just think, back to the original conversation, we'll take a break here in just a moment because Cole's here and we're going to dig into some more conversations here. But I just think making the playoffs is hard. And a lot of what is cool about our current playoff format is that you are kind of at the mercy of what happens in other places. Like, Indiana has a favorable schedule. Guess what? Like, it's just the stars align for them. Like, SMU has a favorable schedule and they take care of business the games they're supposed to take care of. Like, great, stars align for them. Like, you have to run a gauntlet schedule like Florida.
Yeah.
And we might have a top 12 team this year, and their schedule might, and their win-loss record might be 7-5. And they might be a top 15 team in college football on personnel. But guess what? Doesn't matter. 7-5, you're not in. I think it's really tough and should be tough to make the playoffs, but it's not as tough in other places, which can make things even more challenging when we evaluate these coaches and the jobs they do, because not all schedules are created equal. Not all circumstances are created equal. All right, when we come back, we will welcome Colin. We'll get some stories from the first day of school, but before we do, we'll give you some added benefits from our friend Tad at Freedom Financial.
The capital of the sports talk nation. This is Jocks 94.5 and JocksFM.com. Birmingham.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, Thursday, August 7th, 8:40 a.m. right here on Jocks. We've got the Coach Wim Sanderson at 9. Wilson Alexander helps us finish up our LSU conversation from a little bit earlier in the show. And I know, Greg, the first time we've had all of us on the show here this morning, but you kind of missed the portion of the show where we played Marcus Spears' audio and him just saying that the LSU fans were going to be restless if they didn't win big this year. I think you could almost qualify half the league's fan bases this way, but what should the real expectation be, or what should get LSU fans frustrated or angry if Brian Kelly doesn't accomplish it this year?
Like I I kind of hold LSU's expectations a little higher than that of just about anybody in the SEC outside of Texas right now, because of the nature and the circumstances of this upcoming season. They retain their quarterback. They have a significant investment in their roster. They go out and sign a ton of guys to take them to the next level. Year 2 of a new defensive coordinator, new system defensively, so they have a better grasp of that. I think this year, now don't get me wrong, do I think Bama and Georgia are better than LSU? I do. And if they played right now on a neutral site, I would pick Bama and Georgia to beat LSU. But I think the expectations for LSU, because it feels more all in, for their expectations to be higher than that of even Bama and Georgia feels fair to me. Am I like crazy for thinking that?
I don't know. I don't know how I would compare the expectations of the teams because I think it has to do with recent success. It has to do with expectation over time for a lot of different fans. I get that the LSU fans have seen a lot of success recently. I mean, they see multiple coaches win. I mean, is this an accurate statement? LSU has seen more coaches win a national championship, more different coaches win a national championship in our lifetime than any other school?
Well, 3, yeah. So
I'm trying to think who.
No, Ohio State.
Ohio State would be in there?
Yeah.
Tressel, Meyer, Day.
Tressel, Urban, and Ryan Day.
Yeah,
Okay.
literally just got there.
So Miami feels like they would be close. USC may be close. And not even the national championships, though. I was talking about like multiple runs of really good success under different head coaches. So, yeah, there's probably a part of them that looks at it and says, it shouldn't matter who our coach is, we should win. And the landscape of college football is very different, and how teams are going to be prepared, what they're going to actually be able to withstand is going to be different. So I have no problem saying LSU should contend for a playoff spot. That's where I would have them. How deep of a playoff run? I think once you start getting against teams of equal caliber talent-wise and coaching-wise and experience-wise, you better be able to out-scheme them, and you better be balanced. And I think when I say balanced, people think, oh, like 50-50 run-pass. No, you better be able to win a game on special teams. You better be able to win a game on defense. You better have different guys that can step up and make plays at different point in time. Can't just lean on one dude on either side of the ball. You got to be a balanced football team. And I still question if LSU is going to be able to be that. That would be my biggest concern, because if you're an offense that can withstand mayhem, movement, pressure, different alignments, different people going different places, if you can withstand that and you can cover a little bit or get to the quarterback, I think LSU's in trouble when you just look at it from a matchup perspective. So, look at Ohio State last year. Like, they kind of got the outside run going late, and they could get to the quarterback. They would have been able to withstand what it appears this LSU football team is going to be. So I think that it's fine to say they should be in the playoff, but to sit there and say, like, what is win big? Is it just that's what we had the hard time sort of discussing earlier in the show, Greg, is like, what is win big now? Is it national championship or bust? Is it in the playoff? Do people care about an SEC championship anymore? That's what I don't know, is that where fans are drawing the line on satisfactory for any of these teams, Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Clemson, Tennessee, Texas. I don't know where that is, because it feels like we've been in a national championship or bust society, and that's been growing and growing for about the last decade. And now that conference championship games are beginning to lose a little bit of their luster, I feel like we may be seeing that maybe more so than we ever have in our lifetimes.
Fair, but I also think it's very much dependent on the product that you put on the field. So if, for example, you come out like gangbusters and you just run roughshod through everybody in your regular season, and you're sitting there and you're 11-2 and you won your league, like, for example, Arizona State fans remarkably happy and content with where they ended up last year playing in a quarterfinal game. I think Texas fans look at last year and are disappointed, because while making the playoff and winning 2 games was awesome, it felt like that was a roster that could have gone the distance. I think you look at a team like Ohio State, had they lost to Texas in the national championship or in the semifinal, major disappointment. right? Because that was a team that could go and win the national championship. Whereas you look at a team like Notre Dame, who didn't win the national championship, their fans are over the moon. Because what we saw on the field throughout the regular season would not have necessarily told us, yeah, that's a team that's going to go finish second in college football this year. So I think it depends a little bit based on what you show. If you look the part and your fans can recognize that you look the part, then the expectations all adjust and change as the season goes along.
Yeah, it's fair. And I think part of it, too, is who you have been, like historically. Alabama fans, for example, like there's going to be a different expectation there than South Carolina fans. There just is, and for good reason. But, yeah, that's also going to play. There's a lot of things that are going to factor in, but I think it's super intriguing because when you flip it right now, you could say, okay, well, we also have 12 teams getting into the playoffs. There's no excuse we should make the playoffs now. When there were 4 and you won an SEC title or you won the division, you could say, yeah, okay, like just barely on the outside looking in. And that's where I think the part of what Marcus is saying may be accurate is that if you don't get to the playoff, I think fans are going to start flipping the script a little bit and saying, there's 12 teams in there. We can't make that. Regardless of how it's seeded or how the automatic bids or qualifiers go, like that, I don't think that they'll care about that. I think they'll look at it as there were 12 teams that had a chance to play for a title. We weren't one of those. We got problems, and they're going to be upset. So, and you just wonder what the value is of a conference championship game appearance or a conference championship game win, because it's probably not going to be what it has been in the past. But we do know how to add value here on the show, and that's with our friend and wealth advisor, Tad Hill, your trusted retirement planning partner. He's the co-host of the Retire with Freedom radio and TV shows in Birmingham and Huntsville, and has been designated by Forbes as the #1 financial securities professional in the state of Alabama multiple years running. Tad, what do you have for us today?
What I'd like to talk about today are 2 very specific retirement planning challenges that most people are going to have these days. And that is, when do you take Social Security? When is the right time for you to do it, your spouse to do it? And also, do you have a pension decision to make? Now, not everybody has a pension decision to make, but if you do, and you're trying to decide, do I take the annuity? Do I take the lump sum? If I'm going to take the annuity, do I do 100% spousal, 50, 0%? And then just the whole decision around how do I make sure that these sources of income are augmenting my retirement the way I need them to. And then we've got to figure out how to take your savings and turn that into the income that you need to add to those other sources. We can help you figure these things out. I would encourage you to come to a course or come in for a visit. The way to do that is to text JOCKS at 205-988-0006. That's 205-988-0006.
This is a paid placement. Investment advisory services are made available through AE Wealth Management. For more information about Forbes rankings, visit Forbes.com.
Go inside Jocks 94.5 on Jocks TV. Morning Jocks, Mac and Cube, 3-man front video simulcasts are presented by Bill Smith Buick GMC and Game Day Men's Health. Watch on the Jocks mobile app and YouTube by searching Jocks 94.5 TV.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Greg, you're speaking of the confidence you have in LSU and why that expectation will be different. 8:51 a.m. Thursday, August 7th, right here on Jocks 94.5. How much of that has to do with Brian Kelly? Has to do with his staff. And so if the frustration is going to go from the fan base to maybe why that team doesn't meet expectations on him, how much of how you are looking at that team should be because of him?
Well, I don't think it's as much about Brian Kelly. It's more the circumstances of Brian Kelly's tenure. Like, it took him a couple years to get the defensive coordinator right. I think he has gotten the defensive coordinator right. Are we on the same page? Like, we're both believers in Blake Baker and his system.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, like, that goes without saying, but that's a very different style of defense than they played under Matt House. So it's going to take a year, and while they improve statistically from year 2 of Brian Kelly's tenure to year 3, it still was not a well-oiled machine defensively, not yet at least. And by the way, it took a little time because Brian Kelly had to learn the league, and he had to kind of figure out, all right, what buttons do I need to press here? What buttons do I need to press there? Like, that's not easy to do. So I think it took a little time for him to kind of learn the league. I think it took a little time for him to figure out what they needed to be defensively. I think they know what they need to be offensively, but I think he's probably looking at it saying we got to run the ball better. So I think a lot of it has to do with how the roster has aligned, and it feels like Brian Kelly has kind of pushed all his chips to the table this year. Like, with the investment that they've made in their quarterback, spurning the NFL and coming back, with the investment they made in the portal players that they made, that they brought into town, with the emphasis they they put on bringing in one of the top high school running back prospects in the country, with the emphasis they put on bringing in some of the top offensive line prospects in the country to hopefully allow those guys to plug and play year one, like it makes me feel like because of how all in they are this year, this is a year they need to make a run. Because I have a hard time believing that next year's roster is going to be as good as this year's. Now, I look at Georgia, I look at Bama, I look at Texas, I look at a handful of others, and I can tell you, you know what? I think their roster is going to be just as good in 26 as it is in 25. Potentially, depending on departures and who pops and who leaves for the NFL and who doesn't, and who transfers and who doesn't. But I feel like Bama, Georgia, Texas, the trajectory is still heading upwards. With Brian Kelly after this year, it could level off or even in some ways go down a little bit based on what will be needing to be replaced next year. So do you see it similarly?
Yeah, but I think now in today's day and age of college football, it's so tough to say. Like, I thought you made a great point not long ago when we were talking about Auburn, and you were like, listen, what if this roster is pretty much intact the following year out of this upcoming year? The amount of third-year guys that basically have to come back to school, even though it might not be Auburn. But if you win a little bit and they feel great about their circumstances and they stay, what could that roster then look like? It's so hard to play that game in today's college football. What's NIL or fake NIL going to look like? What is the rest of your roster going to look like as far as recruiting? If you bring in a big time wide receiver and they say, yeah, he's probably going to take some of my balls, I'm out of here. Like, I'm leaving. Might be harder to sign a big time quarterback if you have two that are sitting there, like Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight both come back. Are you going to get another 5-star? I don't know. So it's so hard to play that game of who's going to be on that roster the following season. But I do think it's interesting for you to look at it that way. Like with LSU, you can say your time to win is now. And that's one of the other reasons that my expectations are sort of higher than maybe where they should be, or where a lot of people have them, is because, like you said, I look at it as this is you got to win big this year to maybe give yourself that mulligan the following season, because that roster is not going to be close to where it is right now.
Yeah. And like we just talked, like you just said, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, I don't think we live in a society now in college football where it's every year. I just don't see it that way.
But do you think fans can see that at all?
Not yet. But I think reality will set in at some point. There are going to be some years when you look at your schedule and say, God, like Florida. If Florida played Missouri's schedule this year, just using them as an example, I have them as a playoff team. I mean, I really would. If they were playing, because right now on neutral site, I'm taking Florida over Missouri.
Yeah.
I don't know if you are. Probably pretty close.
No, I think it's totally fair to look at it that way.
Fans will warm to the idea that, you know what, some years is just not your year. I think Auburn fans have come to that reality a few times in the last decade, knowing that Bama and Georgia are at home on the odd years. And you know what? Our chances of making a run on the odd years are a whole heck of a lot better than our chances of making a run on the even years, just because of the way the schedule sets up. And that's just 2 games. Yep. So I think they're not there yet, but we'll get there at some point.
Yeah, and it's part of retraining our brains as to where things are and maybe where things are going to go. It's going to be fun to watch. And we'll talk a little bit more about expectations. If you do look ahead to 2 seasons ahead, 3 seasons ahead, we'll ask the coach, Wim Sanderson, about that. Like, how far can you project realistically as a coach? Even though the times are different, I'm sure it's something that crossed his mind and he discussed with his staffs. We'll do all of that next right here on Jocks.
This is McElroy and Cubelic in the morning.